Have we got, look at that, wisdom for the heart, beautiful. Beautiful. Well, we've heard over the last 3 weeks such incredible gems in relation to our friendships and our interactions with one another. Week 1 with Ben, we looked at the promise, the power, and the practice of friendship. Wasn't that good? The promise, power, and practice of friendship, all on our YouTube if you missed any of these. And then with Gosha, Pastor Gosha Denham, she talked about the need to do life well with others. Doing life well, healthily, with honor and trust and truth. And then last week we heard that family matters. Our families matter. And actually all our relationships matter. That's what we've been trying to say in this series, that all our relationships, all our interactions matter. We were created for relationship. Now, can I ask you guys a question? Anybody willing to admit this morning that they were a popular person at school? Oh, yes. Bianca. Bianca was a popular person. Who else was in a like, you were the in crowd? Oh, over there, Juliet. In the in crowd. Anyone else? Over there. You were in the in crowd. How cool is that? Well, friendships for me as a teenager were okay. I was never in the popular crowd. I was never in the clever crowd. I was never in the nerdy crowd, praise the Lord. But I think fellow students liked me. I had a good small circle of good friends at high school. And then as, you know, life went on, youth group, mid to late teens, I wasn't the loudest or the extrovert in the room. I was perhaps a little bit awkward, and I definitely lacked confidence. It was hard to make new friends and introduce myself to others. But again, I had a lovely small group of friends to hang out with. And it was great to do life with them. I am so thankful for the friendships and relationships that I have today. Who else can put their hands up and say they're so thankful? And every single one of them is different. And every single one of them is unique. And they bring life into my world. They bring life into my world. So thankful. In my mid to late 30s, I've actually been on a journey in regards to my friendships. I lost a lot of friendships. I gained new friendships, and I grieved a lot of relationships. But relationships and friendships are not meant to replace the one that matters the most. So stepping into leadership and being asked to take on this beautiful church was actually quite unexpected for Tim and I. So when we were asked to consider taking on UnitedLife, we were shocked, we were slightly confused. Tim actually laughed out loud in hilarity of it all. And then we had to process all the emotions that came with this massive ask. They say that leadership can be a lonely place, and that actually became my reality behind the scenes for a season. We dug deep, Tim and I, and I'm not sure we knew what digging deep in God really was before 2019. But God was so gracious, and we were carried on so many levels, week after week, month after month. But on a personal level, I lost many close friendships. Many of you will know in the room, church transitions bring challenge and sadly often bring movement, and many people left the room. But one day, sometime in 2019, I don't know when exactly, I had a wrestle conversation with God. Anybody had one of those? A wrestling conversation with God. And I actually felt the Spirit of God say in my heart, Charmaine, I'm going to give you new friends. Sounds good, right? And I was like, nah, don't want any of that, Lord. And I actually argued and wrestled in my spirit. And I said, God, I don't want any new friends. I just want the ones I used to have. I just want the old ones back. But again, Charmaine, I'm going to give you new friends. And the wrestle. And I replied with, but what if they leave? Perhaps I'm just not meant to have those kind of friendships anymore as a leader and as a pastor. I had all the excuses to reject what God was actually trying to encourage me with. But so I left it, set it aside, and thought, well, we'll see what God's going to do. But I entered a season of being pretty guarded, still hurting, and reluctant to share the hardships of our journey. But I ached for connection, and I ached for deep-rooted friendship. I needed people in my life that Hebrews 10:24 says would stir me up in love and good works. I needed people like that. And not just Tim, he's so good at doing that for me. But I needed others, like-minded people, other mums, other leaders, other wives, other spirit-filled people. I needed connection. I needed friendship. Well, over the last 5 years, God did exactly as he said he would. He's brought new people into my world, into our lives, and some in very unexpected ways. But they didn't just appear. It took a surrender to what I wanted and a vulnerability to allow God to heal my hurt and what felt like rejection. And it took sacrifice and intentionality to build and make good new friends. So now, today, I can say I have beautiful, rich relationships that are God-given, God-ordained, people who will journey with me, encourage me, challenge me, ensure I stay the path that God has called me to. And for some of them, I've been that friend for them as well. I know I've needed wisdom for my heart. And throughout that season of loss, I also came to realize that the relationship that mattered the most needed more from me. My friendships, my connections with even the people that God had put in my world had at times probably become front and center of my life. They were the first people I went to if I was struggling. They were the advice givers. They were the ones I could depend on. They were my security. They brought love into my life. They brought laughter and joy. And perhaps I even relied on them to prop up and boost my relationship with God. Even with friendship holes in my life at that time, it was Jesus who was the one who was always there. He never left. And he never changed. And he loved me in my weakness. He was with me walking a path that felt lonely and felt unknown. And so I realized that my friendship with him required a shift, required a necessary shift for a renewed desire for Jesus and to build again the relationship that was meant to be the most important. I think most of us in the room would say we long for human connection, friendship, intimacy. But have you ever considered what friendship with God is meant to look like? What's it intended to look like? And perhaps what it could look like for you today. Well, this is what I've learned along the way. And we've been looking at Proverbs this month, and Proverbs has taught me and can teach us about friendship with God. There's so much in there, but I've just chosen like 5 or 6 here. So Proverbs 1:7 says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction." Friendship with God begins with a reverence for him, a respectful awe and acknowledgement of his authority. These are key to a relationship with God. And sometimes we think we are in awe and respect of God, but he's God. We are not God. He knows what's best for me. He knows what's best for you. He is for me. He is not against me. Friendship with God starts with an awe and a wonder of who he is. Proverbs 3:5-6. I think most of us will know this in the room. "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, submit, acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight." Trusting God is essential in our friendship with him. Even when I don't see it, even when I don't feel it, I want to trust that God is working. You know, trust in any friendship is necessary. And with God, we can trust him for who he is. A God who is true and just. A God who is love. Proverbs 2:6 says, "For the Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding. Friendship with God provides us with his wisdom. We have the resources of heaven at our disposal. Friendship with God provides us with his wisdom. Proverbs 3:34 says, he mocks proud mockers, but shows favor to the humble and oppressed. Friendship with God requires humility. As we approach him with an open heart and an open hand, he favors those who understand their need for him. We need him in our lives. We cannot live life without God. Friendship with God requires humility. Proverbs 3:11 and 12, the last one says, my son, do not despise the Lord's discipline and do not resent his rebuke, because the Lord disciplines those he loves. As a father, the son he delights in. Friendship with God sees us able to accept God's correction. He is a father who loves his children. You see, this is the relationship that matters the most. We were created for friendship with God. He gives us people to do life with, absolutely. But the relationship that matters the most is what we were created for, a relationship and a friendship with God. I was gifted a book for Christmas like last year, but I actually only got to read it this September. And I had no idea how much of an impact this book was going to have on me and challenge me and encourage me. It's called Experiencing Friendship with God. And it's by an American Korean pastor called Faith Yuri Cho. I'm just going to read a little excerpt from it, and then I'm actually going to talk a little bit from that. It's a meaty piece of her book. So if it helps you, can you close your eyes and really listen to how she describes friendship with God. The presence of God is an intimate connection that isn't of this world. It isn't magical, but it is indeed mystical. To know God is to know what he means before you exchange a word. To know him is to see him with your heart. It isn't the kind of knowing that is shared by colleagues or neighbors. To know Jesus is to experience a deep and consistent closeness. Nothing can fulfill you more. This is God's intentional design for your being. To recognize this design and prioritize your life accordingly allows you to enjoy the fruit of faith, no matter how desolate the wilderness you face. Your very existence is meant to be fueled by a friendship with God. This friendship can give your spirit more energy than the freshest cup of coffee. It can be where you find the inspiration to create, the direction to make decisions, and the wisdom to build a life on this earth. To experience him should be to know beauty. To hear from him should be your soul's food. To obey him should be a sustaining joy. He is infinite, so to know him is an endless unveiling of riches. A relationship with him can change your every inhale and exhale. This is how we were created. This is how it was meant to be. How beautiful is that? And I'm just going to use some of those statements to challenge and inspire us toward a deeper understanding and desire, hopefully, of what it means to experience friendship with God. She says, to know him is to see him with your heart. Jeremiah 29:13 says, you will seek me and find me, and when you seek me with all your heart. Psalm 27:8 says, my heart has heard you say, come and talk with me. And my heart responds, Lord, I am coming. You see, there's a difference between our head and our heart. You might know someone really well. You might know their dislikes, their likes, their preferences. But when you know a friend deeply and you see them with your heart, you know exactly what's going on in their world. You know when there's unease, you know when there's joy, when there's celebration. You notice more than just seeing with your eyes. Friendship with God, he wants us to know him, and it is to see him with our heart. To experience him should be to know beauty. When you find God, we find a God who is creator. He fashioned this earth. He knit you and I together in our mother's womb. He gives us the ability to create, to make, to bring something out of nothing. We reflect our Maker. To experience him should be to know beauty, even in our brokenness, even in our pain. The Bible says in Isaiah 61, to all who mourn in Israel, he will give a crown of beauty for ashes, a joyous blessing instead of mourning, festive praise instead of despair. Revelation 21:5 says, he makes all things new. To experience him should be to know beauty. Beautiful. To hear from him should be your soul's food. To hear from him should be your soul's food. When Joel and Faith, when our kids were much younger and Tim traveled a fair amount then, it was really hard. It was hard. The kids didn't like it when Daddy was away. Neither did Mummy. They missed him so much. And especially on those times when he went further afield, like to New Zealand or somewhere, it was like, when are we going to hear from Daddy? But then, 12 hours ahead or whatever. But to hear his voice, to hear him over the phone across the miles was just like, oh, okay, it's good. I'm good now. And the kids would be, Mommy, I want the phone. I want to speak to Daddy. I want to speak to Daddy. Why? Because his voice, the desire to hear his voice meant that even though we couldn't see him, we couldn't touch him, we couldn't hug him, we were connected. There's something about the voice. John 10:27 say, my sheep hear my voice, and I know them and they follow me. To hear from him should be your soul's food. Is that what his voice does for you? To obey him should be a sustaining joy. Woo. John 15, 10-11 says, when you obey my commands, you remain in my love. Just as I obey my Father's commands and remain in his love. I have told you these things so that you will be filled with my joy. Yes, your joy will overflow. When we have hearts that are obedient to him, we can experience a joy that sustains us. How amazing is that? Our obedience brings joy. To know him is an endless unveiling of riches. To know him is an endless unveiling of riches. I talked about resources of heaven at our disposal. He is everlasting. He is boundless. Ephesians 3:8 says this, though I am the least deserving of all God's people, he graciously gave me the privilege of telling the Gentiles about the endless treasures available to them in Christ. Endless treasures. The more we experience a friendship with God, the more we discover about him. There is so much more. There is so much more of God. Psalm 145:3 says, great is the Lord, he is most worthy of praise. No one can measure his greatness. His greatness is unsearchable. And then the last statement, your very existence is meant to be fueled by a friendship with God. C.S. Lewis in his book, Mere Christianity, says this, now God designed the human machine to run on himself. How cool is that? He himself is the fuel our spirits were designed to burn. Let me say that again. Now God designed the human machine to run on himself, to run on God. He himself is the fuel our spirits were designed to burn. Do we burn with God? Or do we burn with other things that we fill our lives with? Matthew 4:4 says, man cannot live on bread alone, but needs every word that comes from the mouth of God. Friendship with God gives us life. It is our fuel. Gives us purpose, gives us Jesus himself, gives us his promises. Our existence being fueled by a friendship with God should make us come alive. Why wouldn't you want to truly experience friendship with God like that? To know him is to see him with your heart. Your very existence is meant to be fueled by a friendship with God. To experience him should be to know beauty. To hear from him should be your soul's food. To obey him should be a sustaining joy. And to know him is an endless unveiling of riches. Church, are you experiencing a friendship with God like that today? I know I haven't. And we continue to be on that journey. I desire to have a friendship with God like that. It takes intentionality. It takes sacrifice. It takes surrender. Less of me, God, more of you. You know, why do we see our friendship with God so differently? Why is it outworked? Not like that. I think because sometimes we try to fit God in. Right? We try to fit God in rather than live our lives living from a relationship with Jesus. We just try to fit him in. You know, our friendship with Jesus isn't an added extra. Or another way of putting it, it's not an add-on. We gain so much from a relationship with Christ. We have his promises. We know who he is. He's our healer. He's our provider. But sometimes we just add on Jesus rather than live out from a relationship with him. Anybody with me or just me? Because when Jesus is just an add-on rather than being the core of our lives, our friendship with God, somehow it will become stale. Our very existence is meant to be fueled by a friendship with God. This is the relationship that matters the most. When we fuel our lives with, so much other stuff that the fuel of his presence, the fuel of Jesus himself gets forgotten. I think I'm really good at, sprinkling a bit of Jesus here, sprinkling a bit of Jesus there. I'm not living out from a relationship with him. So I need a bit of Jesus today. I'll just put him on here. Oh, but I don't need him here because I'm really quite good at sorting that one out. So I won't need him there. Oh, but this one's really hard. So I'll put a bit of Jesus on that one. Nope. Our lives aren't meant to be filled with Christian activity, but filled with God's presence in all that we do. And I know the majority of us in the room, we know all these things. But we so need to be reminded that the relationship that matters the most is our friendship with God. It is the highest calling. It's our highest calling and the most satisfying pursuit that we should have. Are you pursuing God today? This year God has called us as a church to live courageous lives. That's the word we put on back in January, to live courageous lives, to be people who would have bold conversations and speak of God. But how can we do that if we just sprinkle a bit of Jesus here and there? We need to be fueled by him. We're called to be people of his presence, living in his purpose and with his power. Do you remember that? People of presence, purpose, and power. We're called to pursue God and to love him with all our hearts. This is the relationship that matters the most. And God desires to call you friend. John 15:15 says, I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends. From living a life fueled by friendship with God, we will be able to do life well with others, with our family, with our friends, with our colleagues, in both the highs and in the harder and challenging seasons of life. Let's not make Jesus an add-on in our life. Our very existence is meant to be fueled by a friendship with God. This is the relationship that matters the most. Psalm 139, 7-10 says this: where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. Whether we're in a season of abundance or in a season of wilderness, or maybe you sit somewhere in between, God is with you. And it is in his presence that we find true friendship, true peace, and true joy. Perhaps today your earthly friendships with others take center stage in your life. Or you do Christian things really well, but you lack deep friendship, life-giving, purposeful friendship with the Lord Jesus Christ. Is your life today fueled by a friendship and devotion to God? God desires a real proximity with his people. There's such the value of being together. There are many scriptures that talk about, he asks us to remain in him, or to draw close to him, or to come to me, or to rest in me. It all starts with a relationship with God. It all starts with a proximity to God. It all starts with a friendship fueled by God. You know, we just sung in the bridge of Christ Be Magnified. It says this: I won't bow to idols. I'll stand strong and worship you. You know, idols can be friendships that are not of God or not God himself. I won't bow to idols. I'll stand strong and worship you. And if it puts me in the fire, well, I'll rejoice, because you're there too. And what about this line? I won't be formed by feelings. I'll hold fast to what is true. And if the cross brings transformation, then I'll be crucified with you. The cross of Christ is where it starts. Accepting that Jesus' sacrifice makes way for us to have a relationship with God the Father. That we can live in freedom, we can live in his hope and his peace. We can have a life with God. And maybe you're in the room today and a friendship with God sounds really foreign. Or you used to have a deep friendship with God and different things have got in the way. Different things have taken that place. I want to encourage you this morning that you can return to a friendship with God. You can ask God to return to the place that he's meant to take in our hearts today. That you want a life fueled by a friendship with him. To know him is to see him with your heart. To experience him should be to know beauty. To hear from him should be your soul's food. To obey him should be a sustaining joy. And to know him is an endless unveiling of riches. Your very existence is meant to be fueled by a friendship with God.